Goods and services tax is entering into the seventh year of its existence. Now, the big question is what will happen next? To talk about all those things, we have with us two eminent guests, MS Money, senior partner with Deloitte, and Darshan Bora, partner with economic law practices. Mr. Money, let me start with you. How you see the journey of GST of 6 years?
I think it has been much better than what we expected, and especially seeing the first 1 or 2 years of GST, where businesses had a lot of challenges. So if I go back today at the end of 6 years of GST and compare it with the situation that prevailed pre-GST, I would say we have completely altered the landscape of indirect tax on businesses in India. No longer do we have an excise duty, a service tax, different VAT across each state, an entry tax in some cases, an octroi in Bombay, entertainment tax in some places, various other cesses. We have got rid of all of those. And today, any person, any manufacturer, producer, consumer wanting to buy a product in anywhere in India attracts the same rate of tax.
Okay.
So people don't now pay different rates of tax for toothpaste depending on the state, television depending on the state, mobile phone depending on the state. That's gone. So if I look at last 6 years, my sense overall is we have made enormous amount of progress in 6 years. Of the 6 years, I would divide it into two buckets. The first bucket was the first 1 or 2 years, where even the GSTN, the GST officials, it was new for them also. So everyone was grappling with the change. And that period was a little difficult for all businesses in India. But after the initial hiccups of the 1 or 2 years got over, last 3 years especially has been excellent because the GSTN works very well. All the tax authorities are now focused in ensuring that every single compliance is online. There is absolutely nothing which is offline or which requires a visit to the tax department. So to a very large extent, I would say businesses in India are very happy today with the way GST is. Sometime back recently, we in Deloitte had done a survey on GST. And in that also, when we asked 600 odd people, very senior people in the industry, on whether they were happy with GST, almost 75% of people were absolutely thrilled with GST compared to the past. So my sense is it has been a big success. Does it still have areas of improvement, as you said before? Yes, of course, it has got certain areas which can be improved further.
Darshan, when we talk about any system, any taxation system, there are a host of laws and subordinate legislation. For example, when we talk about GST, we have 101st Constitutional Amendment Act, which provides the basic framework for GST. Then we have the CGST, then UTGST, IGGST, and then 28 state laws and 3 UT laws with the assemblies. And also we have compensation cess. So with this kind of legal structure, do you think that the law is really simple to make it a good and simple taxation system?
We just have to take a step back. Okay, what was the situation prior to GST? Okay, we are such a diverse country. Okay, so each state had had their own VAT laws, had their own local taxes. Okay, apart from that, for depending on the nature of tax or nature of the transaction, you face different taxes. Okay, if it was a service, it was a service tax. If it was a sale of goods, then VAT, and perhaps if you're doing a manufacture, then there was an excise. Okay, for a country as diverse as India, as big and as vast as India, at least what we have, after the constitutional amendment for GST, we had a common constitutional framework, okay, over which you could have a, levy which is on a, transaction of supply, okay, and be it a transaction of supply of goods or a transaction of, supply of services. So we had this, the constitution framework which was given. And after that, if you really look at it, the GST Council came up with the model laws. And, if you look at the CGST or the various state GST or the UT GST laws, they are following the same concept. So while you may have a multiple, acts to deal with, from a legal standpoint, the provisions are replica of each other. Okay, so what we have today, is a single, regulatory framework, okay, to tax transaction of supplies across the country. while you may be subject to different jurisdictions, depending on where you are located, there may be multiple acts, but the underlying framework is one. Okay, so this is, this has happened first time since independence, and this is really, this has set up India, to grow from here. The system can, now be changed, it can be, tweaked as per the requirements of the future, but at least you have that framework. So this has happened for the first time in India.
Mani sir, coming to you about this GST number, collection number. So whenever we talk about GST, the first thing which is highly discussed is the number. So now we are in the range of 160, 150 to 160 lakh crore a month. Do you think that giving the potential of the consumer class in the country, this number is really indicating the consumption pattern in India?
Yeah, 1,50,000 crore or a 1,60,000 crore number, which seems to have become the new normal in the last few months, was actually looking like a dream even 1 year back. Because I remember even a year back when the collection would be 1.4 lakh crore, it would be a cause for celebration. So it has been progressively increasing. Now, to your point on, has it achieved its requisite potential? To a large extent, to answer that question, we would need sector-wise data of the collections, which sector has contributed what amount to the collections, and then link up that sector-wise data with the growth in that sector. Because certain sectors, for instance, we have been seeing are doing very, very well. Aviation is doing very well. Hospitality is doing very, very well. Consumer durables are doing very, very well. Cement is doing very, very well. Now, if the GDP numbers emanating from these sectors is plotted against a collection from those sectors over 2 discrete time periods, then it's possible to come to a conclusion on, is there a need to focus on a particular sector more? Is some sector doing very well, but the requested amount of tax is not flowing to the government? Or is the right amount of tax flowing to the government? Okay. Because for the GST collections, to my mind, there are 2 variables. It's really simple to understand that. The first and foremost variable is how the economy of the country is doing. That's a big, big variable. So if the economy of the country is doing well, GDP growth is 6.5%, 7%, consuming class is increasing, tier 2, tier 3 towns are doing very, very well. That is one variable. The other variable is what are the actions of the GST authorities in curbing tax evasion. How are they keeping track of the tax evaders? How are they going ahead and deciding that there are a very small segment, I'm sure, but a very small segment of people who may be trying to game the GST system? How do they keep track of all those activities? These are the 2 primary variables which determine the collection. But for us to know and arrive at a number that this is the right number, that number will always be a dynamic number, because it also depends on these 2 variables. As the economy does better and better, the GST collections will go up and up. If the tax evasion goes up, the GST collections will go down. So since both these factors are variable and both have got a sectoral impact, extremely difficult to predict, but possibly my sense would be we are on the right trajectory after a very long time, and we should just move ahead on this trajectory.
Darshan, one thing we have seen that under GST, evasion is not now incentive. Evasion is not giving any kind of incentive. But still we are finding that so many people are taking advantage of one particular loophole or another loophole. And we have seen that because of the special drive, so many assessees have been found that they were having fake ID, fake GST number. So if I have to ask 2 basic changes in GST law, which will curb the evasion in a much larger way, what could be those 2?
One would definitely be rationalization of rates, because the higher the tax rate, the higher the scope or the benefit of evasion. That, and the numbers what you mentioned, we may just want to take it with a pinch of salt, because a lot of investigation which is ongoing is sometimes touted by the some of the revenue officers as fake invoice. We've had listed companies who've been alleged of indulging into fake invoicing. So we just perhaps may have to take those kind of evasion numbers with a pinch of salt. But yes, the rate needs to be rationalized, and also there are a few lingering legal issues, okay, which make compliance a bit difficult. For example, if you're a entity having a head office in one state, and then there are offices across the country, do you need to cross charge your central cost? What happens to the brand name? What happens to the logo, which is with the with the head office? So there are a series I can list down, a series of such legal issues which are there. And what we have seen is invariably authority in some state picks up one issue, and he then, there's suddenly a press release that, so many crores of tax evasion is detected, but at the heart of it, it's a legal issue. So rate rationalization, plus if you are able to kind of simplify or clarify on the legal issues, I think that will go a long way in further easing compliance.
And if Darshan, if I add one more question to your explanation, that because of the different explanation by different AR are also making things very complicated. Now we are going for a centralized kind of system, which the GST Council has already approved, but it will take some time. Do you think that the common ruling or the common framework among the AR is also making things difficult under GST?
Yeah, with the
Lack
AR,
of common, I'm sorry.
yes, with the AR, I think the fundamental change which is required is currently the AR is manned by authorities who are whose task is to maximize the revenue. Okay, and their officers who have been collecting revenue in all their career. So perhaps like they are now going to come up with a tribunal which will have equal number of judicial and technical members. Perhaps there may be a need to have an AR which which incorporate judicial members. That will kind of give a balance to the rulings of the AR, because otherwise what you see is 90 to 95% of the rulings of the AR are in favor of the department. On genuine interpretational issues, you don't have clients wanting to go to AR because they know what the outcome is going to be.
Manish sir, now coming to the rate rationalization, we all know that next year we are going to have the general election. And there is a group of minister which is looking into rate rationalization. But now there is no convener. We have to think of a new convener for the GM looking into the rate rationalization. Do you think that the rate rationalization wait for rate rationalization will be much longer now?
So at the outset, what I would say is when we speak of rate rationalization, what we are effectively saying is that the 5, 12, 18, 28 that we have, these are the four broad rates that we have. These should come down to 3 rates. We cannot obviously be a 2-rate country because our demographics are very different from many other countries which have a 2-rate structure. And GST being an indirect tax, it impacts poor people much more than anybody else. And therefore, the demographic constituency needs to be considered whenever we discuss rate rationalization. So we have 4 rates now at a broad level. If we keep gold, silver, diamond aside, we have 4 broad rates, 5, 12, 18, 28. So these can possibly be brought down to 3 rates. Now, if these are to be brought down to 3 rates, effectively, the 12% rate will potentially go off, and some products in that may get subsumed into 5, and some may get subsumed into 18, unless we want to tinker with the rates themselves. Okay. Since 18% is a well and widely accepted rate applicable to 70% of the products, to me, it seems unlikely anyone will want to tinker with an 18 and make it a 17 or make it a 19. Possibly that will cause much more inconvenience to businesses. So if we assume that we are going to have the rate of 12 going off sometime in future, in this year, next year, whenever, we have to bear in mind that even today, there are very few products which are at 12%. So when we talk of 4 rates, it is not that each rate bucket has 25% of the products in it, or the overall collection comes from all the four buckets equally. It does not. 75 to 80% of the products are in the 18% bucket. There are very few products in the 28% bucket, which is largely automobile parts, tobacco, pan masala, and cement. These are the 28% items. So the 5% items again include essential goods, packaged rice, packaged atta, and products like that. So the 12% rate bucket today, even today, includes very few products. And the challenge before them would be that if any of these products move up to 18, they may become uncompetitive. There may be a larger case where people will not want to pay the tax. Equally, if all the 12% items come down to 5%, there will be a revenue loss that will come out of it. That is basically, I guess, what all the policymakers are grappling with. And since 12% includes very few products, they may not be in a hurry to move in for rate rationalization at an early date. They may take their own time in coming to a conclusion on that.
And what about inverted duty structure? Because that is one area where we have a more concern than the straightforward taxation system. How to deal about that?
So the inverted duty structure has been progressively dealt with in various GST Council meetings. There are very few products today which are left with inverted duty structure. But the challenge again for the products that are left
textile
now,
is there, Mr. Mani. Textile
absolutely.
is there, fertilizer is there, tractor
Absolutely.
is there. There are so many products are still there.
Absolutely.
And textile, if I take the textile, that is the most challenging one.
Absolutely. So in inverted duty structure, the reason why possibly we still have some products left is because of the fact that the only way to rectify the inverted duty structure is to raise the rate of duty on the output so that the inverted duty goes away. So the inverted duty structure is caused because the rate on the output is higher and the rate on the input is lower. That is what leads to an inverted duty, need for refunds, etc. So if the rate on the input is increased to match that of the output, it goes away. The problem is the inputs could potentially be manufactured by SMEs and MSMEs who cannot afford a rate hike.
Right.
Equally, now the other way of doing it is to bring down the rate of tax on the output.
Then the import
if that is brought down, so then we have a challenge with the collection. So inverted duty structures, as I said before, have come down significantly. As you rightly pointed out, there still are few products and few cases where it persists. But this, I guess, will go away over a period of time as the GST matures. We are now into just 6 years of GST. And for a legislation that is as profound as GST, I would say 6 years is a very small time span in the life of GST.
Darshan, coming to compliance issue, this is one area where still we have some complaint in terms of how to be more easier compliance system. What are the 2-3 things which you feel that it is required in a short to medium term to ease compliance much more than what we have?
See, compliance, if you look at the GSTN, I think it has been, it leverages technology. There has been a significant simplification, of the return interface and all. I think what is needed is to ease compliance is the law. I think there are a series of legal issues, as I mentioned. I think when people talk about there's a problem with GST compliance, means they have perhaps have a non-clarity on a particular issue. Okay. Or to give you an example, okay, they may have taken a particular position now, which has been overruled by a court. And now suddenly they are having a massive liability. They're staring at a massive liability for the past 5 years. Okay. So can we, have concept like prospective overruling? Means if I have taken a tax position based on the law which was existing at a particular point of time, okay, and thereafter there is a overruling of that position by a court or by way of an amendment, it has to be prospective in nature. Because I have already sold my goods, I have passed on the tax which I think was liable. Now, if you are, imposing a massive liability on me, that may, cause severe business disruptions. So when people say that there are compliance issues, I think it may not just be, the problem in filing the returns or with the GST. It is perhaps with the clarity in some of the legal provisions, the way our justice system works, where we have different high courts, as you mentioned, the ARs, where, they are prone to different interpretations. How do you streamline this? Okay, I'll give you an example. We have a client who's taken a AR ruling in Karnataka. They are a pan-India company. Now, his jurisdictional authority in other state is saying, boss, I'm not going to follow the ruling what you obtained in Karnataka. I'm going to, adopt an independent position. Now, if I'm a pan-India company, then for each issue, do I need to approach 30 advanced ruling authorities? Okay, so I think these are, some of the underlying problems which manifest into compliance.
So Darshan, if I understand correctly, that subordinate legislation also need to be the uniform one, and also the implementation and interpretation of that subordinate legislation is also critical. Mr. Mani, my final question to you, that if I go for, say, if we talk in, say, 2026, after 2 years, so at that time, what kind of changes you will talk about when we are going to discuss about 8 years or 9 years of GST?
Okay, so at the outset, let me just mention that I'm not an astrologer and I'm just a tax guy. So extremely difficult to predict the future. But if the plans that we have been hearing in terms of how the economy is going to go ahead, and assuming we do not have too many headwinds that come up between now and 2026, then the size of the economy should be so gigantic that the GST collections would cease to be a topic of interest every month. And possibly then the entire focus of media and everybody else on GST collections would only be in those months where it does not reach its potential. That is the only thing that would get reported. Otherwise, it's going to, happen. My sense in terms of what we can expect going forward, I can see this trend already because of the excellent data that the GSTN has, and because they're sharing it with various other tax authorities. I believe there is a positive spin-off even in respect of the income tax collections, which we have seen going up. So when the income tax collections go up, possibly some part of it is also because they have access to data in respect of supplies, purchase, and sale made by various entities, which are expected to figure in the income tax return as well. So 2 years or 3 years from now, I would expect this data integration between the GST authorities and the income tax authorities to be seamless. That may be online real time. And therefore, if you look at the overall tax collections and look at the tax collection percentage as a proportion of GDP, that may be much higher than what it is now.
Darshan, the final question to you, that if I talk about the medium term, say 3 to 5 years, what are the 2-3 changes which you will see in going to be part of the GST system?
I think the tribunal, GST tribunal, which is really long overdue. We are, almost 6 years after GST and we don't yet have a tribunal. So that definitely. And, there has been a recent trend of, for example, liquidated damages. That was a very intricate issue, where nobody had a clarity. But the CBIC came out with a clarification. So, likewise, there are another series of 5 to 10, intricate issues similar to liquidated damages. We may, have the CBIC, come out with clarifications even in relation to those.
Okay.
So that will, have, give a lot of clarity to the taxpayers.
Okay. Mr. Mani, Darshan, thank you very much for talking on various aspects of GST. With this, we close this session. Thank you very much for watching.